Hello ladies and gentlemen. I know that my channel has a lot of content on it about working with spirits and doing various things, but I don't really talk about protection a lot. And there's a couple reasons for that. One is I don't go overboard on my protective magic. I have a rather confident attitude about psychic attack, and my protections guard themselves, if you will. They hide themselves. I don't like to talk about it a lot. It's something that is mostly passive in that I don't actively maintain things. Rather, I have workings with spirits that have my back. I set up basic protections and I occasionally refresh them, and I do things with them occasionally when I feel necessary. But I don't have to worry too much because of certain things that I've done, certain protections that I have, certain entities that I've built relationships with. So that's kind of important. But I want to talk about a few things about protection and give you an example of something simple you can do. And we'll get to that in a minute. But I want to talk about protection a little bit. A lot of people mistake aggression for protection. What do I mean by that? They think of their protection as if it's got to be an offensive thing. They think of their protection as if they need an entity or a protective spell or something that will attack someone. And one example of this would be like, let's say you are aware of someone who's maybe family's being abused, you got an abuser in the house, and people will come around asking for spells how to deal with that. And of course, in their own mind, they want to launch spiritual attacks against the person who's committing the bad actions. They want to curse the abuser, and that's a feel-good action, but that doesn't really do any good, because if you're doing that, you're most likely going to be your magic and negativity is most likely going to destabilize that person. It's probably not going to kill them instantly or anything like that. A lot of times when you do good death magic, it doesn't work right away, because your truest intention is not to just kill them. A lot of times, if you want to do baneful magic, a lot of times you want to cause pain, you want to cause suffering. So if your baneful intent is working, what's going to happen? More than likely, it's not going to lead to a clean end. It's going to lead to them probably suffering and maybe taking their abuse out on people more, and really, maybe acting out more. So you're better off finding ways to protect those involved and potentially doing something to bind that person or block them. But I'm not really here to talk about that specific avenue. I'm more worried about you. I want you to have ideas and ways that you can think about protecting yourself, and you can go as complicated or as simple as you want. The most important thing is to feel comfortable and that you have confidence in what you've done, because that confidence alone breeds a lot of protection. It's very difficult to psychically attack someone who is confidently comfortable, not in an arrogant, false confidence, but someone who just feels secure. That feeling of security leads to better decisions and judgment. You're not worried about things a lot. Someone who's worried all the time, they make bad decisions. Someone who's confident that, hey, I'm protected by these spirits, I don't have a lot to worry about, they're more likely to take things in stride and see a bad day as a lesson, rather than a defeat that's destroying them, that they have to retaliate for, they have to worry about being attacked. Now, I know a lot of people in the occult community that get really paranoid. I've worked with some of these people, I've helped them, a lot of them I haven't been able to help, because their intentions are there's something wrong. They're very paranoid. They think they're being attacked constantly. They think that everyone's out to get them. They're always looking for some kind of conspiracy in things. And I often have to tell them, I'm like, who are you that people are going to be going out of their way to do hexes on and do curses against? What have you done that's causing this? And the reason I say that is because a lot of the times, if you're living a good, noble life, if you're truly being a genuine person, you're not hurting people, you don't make a lot of enemies, and your occasional, slights against perhaps someone like me won't really trigger anything. I'm not likely to banefully curse people just because they said something negative about me on Facebook. That's not how I operate. And you shouldn't be fearful like that. And I see that all around the community. There's people who are just paranoid, and I'm not going to name names, but they're constantly getting involved in different things, and there's dramas going on, and they're talking about cursing people and how blah, 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 blah. Take a step back. Those people are unhinged, they're not well, and their magic is not working for them. If your magic is working for you, you shouldn't have to worry endlessly about being cursed. It's actually a path of ascension, and as a path of ascension, Okay, you shouldn't be scared all the time of being slapped around by other peasants in the environment. You should be thinking to yourself, I'm being guarded by spirits, I'm being guided by spirits, my actions are sincere, I'm being sincerely worked with by spirits. I don't have to worry about, Peggy, Sue, and Ralph, who didn't like that I had that post of whatever on Facebook and now they're cursing me. Get your stuff settled. Get yourself settled and oriented in a way that you understand that you're probably fine. You're probably not going to be attacked that much, if at all. I have been attacked 2 or 3 times since I've come into the community. I know I have. One of them was rather remarkable. My car basically cracked in half because someone was, I think, trying to attack me for certain things I was doing with someone. But other times it was mostly just some lethargy, just a little bit of draining. Someone must have sent a vampiric force towards me, and of course I dealt with that rather easily. But there are lots of things that people will do to you, and they sometimes do it unintentionally. And this is where real protection matters. This is where having some kind of active or passive protection can help. Rather than being fearful of people attacking you intentionally with ritualized magic, you as an average person, even someone like me, should be more concerned with the unintentional attacks of negativity, the evil eye, if you will. You don't have to be doing a hardcore ritual to give someone the equivalent of what the superstition of the evil eye is, whatever you want to call that. But if you have someone who really doesn't like you and they're wishing pain, death, and suffering upon you, especially if they're doing so and maybe they are an intuitive magician in a way. They don't do magic, on purpose, but their actions have a magical quality to them. Maybe they do wish you a lot of harm, and then they put you out of their mind. They go back with their day, and that energy snaps out. It's released, and it's going in your direction. Now, generally speaking, if you're a person who is living a noble life, you are taking care of yourself and your family, your friends, whatever's important to you. You're not abusing people. You're not. It's kind of like play stupid games, get stupid prizes. If you're not playing stupid games, curses have a lot less fertile soil to land on. Someone who doesn't go out abusing people is a lot less likely to have a problem, with someone that would cause them to be attacked. Now, of course, magic will find a way if it's going to do anything. It may not have anything to do with that. It may be like a bolt out of the blue. You just you get a heart attack or something, a car crash or something. It's something that doesn't matter how nice you are to people. So it pays to try to channel this negative energy that's being heaped upon you, whether you're aware of it or not, and to deal with it in some capacity. And there's passive ways, there are aggressive ways, there's more assertive ways, there's all different kinds of ways. Think of it like this. You can be a shield, you can have a shield which just blocks things. You can parry things with just being bendable and flexible, where instead of blocking a strike, you roll with it and push it out of the way, and this is in a martial arts perspective. Or you can just get out of the way. You can be hard to hit, if that makes sense. So there's a lot of options for how you can set up your intentions for your personal protection in magic. And this is really one of those fields where the sky's the limit, your intention is the limit, your imagination's the limit. As I have learned in magic, a lot of this being not imaginary, but it's based upon your imagination. Your imagination's able to create servitors and thought forms and give familiars their forms and all of these things. So your imagination plays a big role. So use that, especially as a beginner. It can be hard for a beginner to trust their imagination, but get in the habit of using your imagination to create the things that are protecting you. So one of the simplest things that you can do, of course, daily meditation, you can do, banishing rituals of different kinds. Of course, you have the lesser banishing ritual, which isn't really what it sounds like. The lesser banishing ritual is more of a way to assert yourself as the divinity of your ritual space, is really what that's more about. But it's been used for protection for a long time. You can, of course, change it to use infernal deity names or something instead of angelic names if that doesn't make you comfortable. You can use my align and clear method, which is more like a form of qigong, where you're building up energy into your core. Maybe you're calling upon a spirit if you feel it's necessary, and then you're ejecting that energy outward with the intention not to destroy things in your environment, but to align things with your intention, to align them to be friendly with you if possible. The things that will not, the things that are really adversarial and want to destroy you, will be pushed away. That is your intention. But of course, a lot of that is in your mind. A lot of that is in your intention. A lot of that is as calling upon a spirit to help you do that. So it's a little bit different. It's a little bit more. And now that is something you can do actively. That's something you can do on the spot. These are things you can do daily or weekly or whatever to help align things. But that's not really protection. That's more of like a house cleaning. And just like house cleaning can protect you from germs and illness, yeah, that goes a long way to protecting you. But you might also want to set up more passive or even active defenses in your home, your environment, your body. You might want to create objects that you can bring with you, magically charged objects that can be anchors for your intentions, and do things with that. One of the simplest ones that I've used, of course it does require a certain amount of energy work ability, but you can of course change this to suit your abilities. If you really can't feel energy, if you're not used to that, but you can imagine the things that I'm talking about, you can still do this very easily, but you may want to modify it. You may want to do things a little differently. But I'll give you an example, and you can do this with a smudge stick or you can do it without one. But what I like to do is I will go around my home, especially my ritual space, and using a wand or my fingers in the wand, for like this is in my books as I describe. I use this as my wand when I don't have one, or a staff. Anything that you can use to direct your energy in that masculine way, to the power of creations coming through you. Usually with your dominant hand, whether that's your right or your left, whichever one's your dominant hand, you want to use that for pushing out your intention, right? So you will go around your home and you will visualize your home almost like you can see through it or something, almost like it's a transparent object. You're entering like an astral, quasi-astral state. And you recognize the walls as the legitimate boundaries of your home, and you want to use that as above, so below principle, so that your walls become the physical anchors for your spiritual intention. And the simplest way that I do this is I will create a sigil that represents the idea of protection. It's in my own words. I will change it from time to time, change the wording around, change the intention just a little bit, but with the same basic idea. Don't worry about monkey's paw, just make it something that feels right. Don't worry about, oh, my home is protected from lawyers, monsters, goblins, demons, angels, Christians, but don't worry about listing out all the crap. Just give it a general intention that feels secure. So create your sigil. But in this particular case, you're not actually doing a send-off with the sigil like you would do in chaos magic, where you prepare your sigil, meditate on it, and then release it in a ritual spell. You could do that to prepare it if you wanted to. What I prefer to do is I'll create that sigil, and I will literally inhale it. I will imagine my spiritual, my astral body, my energy body inhaling that sigil into itself with its intention and everything into my body. Then I will go around the home and I will draw the sigil if possible. If it's not too complicated, I'll draw the sigil, or I will point at the wall or the region of the house, whatever I want toward, and I will visualize that sigil spreading out, almost like I'm shooting a water hose or creating an energy field. And I will visualize like an ice wall or an energy wall made out of whatever color or light or energy that I feel is appropriate. Sometimes it's blue, sometimes it's red, sometimes it's green, sometimes it's bright white, sometimes it's darkness, sometimes it's a mirror. And I would envision in the astral space creating a kind of like a one-way barrier where I can come and go through it, but negativity that I don't want attacking me cannot come through it. And this is very effective to do. Now, of course, you want to do all four walls or whatever around you. You want to do the floor and the ceiling. You can, of course, instead, it's also possible, but I find it's more effective to use the walls of your home to charge them with your intention, because they become an anchor for that energy, rather than just kind of shooting out an energy field around you and making a bubble, which I think those tend to disperse more personally. I find that they, without something to anchor on, and of course you could anchor it on an object. You could take, a protective stone. I don't have one that's really really focused on protection, but you can take like just pretend this is obsidian or some kind of pyrite or something that even labradorite is pretty protective like this is. You could take something really protective like this and then imagine the sphere of protection radiating out from it if you wanted to. But I find that when I charge the walls of my home, for example, with that intention, it tends to stick really well. And of course you can augment this with physical objects. So you could put very small little stones of obsidian, like in all the windowsills and things like that. And this, of course, is a thing that has been done by different cultures, throughout antiquity and the modern times. You have in Feng Shui, you can put your mirrors up that are supposed to scare demons away. You have gargoyles on the roof. You can put your stones around your windows. You can take sea salt and use that, of course, to add that little physicality to this if you want to. And I do recommend this to a point. Of course, it can get a little tedious and a little problematic if you have a big home, maybe, to do this throughout the home. But some of you won't mind. At the very least, you might want to do this for your ritual chamber. So your ritual chamber has that added little oomph of protection, because your ritual chamber is usually where people might try to attack you because they feel like, it's like more of a challenge and an insult, I guess, to really nail you while you're doing it. And let's not forget, you're probably going to be using your ritual chamber becomes kind of like a gateway between the material and the astral for you in a lot of cases. So it can become like an open door if you're not careful. But so you want to seal your walls off with this visualization. This is an excellent way to do things, and you can certainly make your home into a fortress. And it doesn't require a lot. Just every now and then, when you feel it's necessary, I inhale that energy. And I forgot to mention, when I'm charging the walls with this, a lot of what I do has a qigong kind of element to it, where I inhale when I'm taking things into myself, and I exhale when I'm pushing things out. And of course, my book, Become the Maelstrom, does talk quite a bit about yin and yang breathing and how you can use these things to charge and drain things of energy to help your energy work along. So it's not just in your head, there's a physical component to what you're doing. You could, of course, as I said before, use sage smudging in a similar way. Instead of using your wand, you can hold your seashell with your sage, whatever you're using, and when you're blowing your protection out, you blow it through the sage smoke and envision that becoming your force field. Very effective, very, very effective. I don't need to do it, but it's very effective when it's done that way. I've often seen that work wonders. Make sure that you are hitting everything. Try to remember all the nooks and crannies, or at least focus. You can even do this from the outside of your home, by the way. You don't have to do this from inside. If you just want to make it an all-around coverage for your house, just visualize, go outside, visualize the outside of your home being warded, and do it that way. There's nothing wrong with that. But I tend to do it from the inside because it just feels right. I feel like I'm creating a separate, because let's be honest, a lot of you live in a home like mine probably, where there's not, maybe you got some open windows and stuff, but you don't feel like you're outside when you're in your house. You almost feel like you've entered a different space. You feel like you've entered another world, perhaps. Unless you live in one of these really open floor plan homes with the big bay windows and everything, you probably feel, when you're in your home, you probably feel pretty like you've almost entered a cave, right? So let's use that feeling to empower what we're doing by creating this barrier on the inside, so it really feels like you're creating shields up, right? You want to do that. So this last form of protection, and there's a lot more you can do, setting up servitors and wards and things like that are active. Now, wards can mean passive, they can mean active, they can be the shields that I talked about, but you can also have kind of like intelligent active wards, if you will. And one of the ones that I use occasionally, I've kind of taken this down. I'm going to be resetting something like it again. I probably might do it completely differently now that I'm showing it to you guys. Whoops. Here I go dropping it. It's probably mad at me for not setting it up, right? Here we go. Okay. Don't have a lot of room here to work with. So what I'll do is I have this very cheap piece of obsidian that I bought. I believe it was on Amazon, actually. I got it on Amazon because I needed a piece of obsidian for a ritual purpose. And it was like one of those Reiki stones that I got. So I got this, and I said, you know what, I'm going to use this differently than I originally intended. It was originally going to be a focus for working with a dark being. And I said, no, I'm going to use this for something maybe a little bit more appropriate, because even just the way it feels very protective. It doesn't feel very infernal. It feels very protective. It feels very, this is like a tower of protection, right? So what I'll do is I will prepare this object very simply to be kind of like a lightning rod for negativity in my environment. And what this will do, I actually set this up for a little bit differently, because obsidian is like a really good negative energy air freshener. If you work with obsidian enough, you kind of get rid of a lot of the negative influences in your life. You may still feel shitty, but I tell you right now, working with obsidian tends to have a good kind of air freshener effect. That's the only way I can put it. And you can even tell sometimes when you get a really good piece. I don't know if you can, yeah, there we go. You can probably hear that. Here it's like ringing. It's like a really nice, good piece of obsidian. Even though it's cheap, I don't know if it's like reconstituted. I don't know if it's actually just dyed quartz. I really don't know. It feels like obsidian to me. It has that feeling of obsidian, but it might not be. So just be wary. It almost doesn't matter, but it really helps if it is actual obsidian. And if you're not sure, just go to your New Age store, whatever you have nearby. Make sure you're buying a piece of obsidian. And remember, obsidian is volcanic glass. That's something that's going to be important in a moment. So when I set this up, I will do my usual process of cleansing the stone. Usually that involves either one or more of the following. I'll run it under really cold water for a little while, and you'll feel a difference. If you ever run stones under cold water, you'll feel a difference. It does something to them, and you can feel it when you do this. Even tap water works. If you have access to a natural source of water, like a spring or a brook or a river, especially if it's a clean one, you don't want to do it like a highly polluted, shitty one that's like right next to a toxic waste dump. But if you can, you can of course cleanse it in that river, and you'll feel a difference when you pull it out. I promise you. You can also use rainwater. That is also one way that you can do this with water. You can use moon water, of course, if you know how to make that. It's not too hard. Then, of course, you can use sunbathing or moonbathing. You can do it that way to both charge and clear the rock. As I put it, that's one great way to do things. But be aware that the sun will bleach stones if you do it a lot. Sometimes even just one day is enough. You can really change the color. So if you really, I don't think it really does it to obsidian, but other stones it can. So be careful. Once you feel like it's been cleansed and charged, you can of course do more with it. I find that with obsidian in particular, I like using flame as a final step. Like once I've charged it, cleansed it, maybe I've fumigated it with incense. Of course, natural incense is better for fumigation in this way. Offering incense isn't maybe as big a deal, but when you're fumigating, I like to use the real stuff, like real sage, real Palo Santo, real herbs, whatever I can find. Even if I have to go into my herbal cabinet and just grab, herbs that I know are sacred or special to entities, for example, I will burn those, like cinnamon, star anise, things like that. They can all be very useful. But I will use flame as the final step. Now, this can be a candle flame, this can be your cauldron flame, and I will pass it through there for a while. I'll go back and forth. I'll just intuitively feel like what it needs to have done to it. And I will envision that flame. While I'm doing this, I'm envisioning the origin of this obsidian. It's very important that it's obsidian for this reason, because obsidian is volcanic glass, and this is formed by, it comes deep from within the earth. It's a form of glass. It pours out and it's molten. It's actually, its element is more fire than it is earth, believe it or not. So you're actually charging this with that flaming earth energy, and it's like returning to its source, if you will, a little bit. It's reminding it. It's charging with that source energy that it has. And then while you're doing this, when you're done, this is where it gets kind of energy work oriented. If you're a righty, then you want to hold this in your right hand, whatever your dominant hand is. You want to hold this in your right hand, and you want to, as you inhale, you want to visualize and feel protective energies entering your body, running through the chakra that you feel are most protective to you. So in this case, you might want to use your root chakra. If you're feeling just general fear, especially for survival issues. Your solar plexus, if you feel like there's some social issues. Your sacral, if you're worried about social issues. Your solar plexus, if you feel like you're losing energy, like someone's draining you. Your heart chakra, if you're feeling like you want to protect yourself from emotional things, or all of it. Just run it through your energy body. Don't even worry if you had chakra removal and you have just the one, or if you just have one point star in your center, run the energy through that with the intention of what you want to do, and then push it into this stone. Now, the idea that you want to energize this stone with is well, it's really what it already does. It's an energy purifier. It's an energy balancer. It doesn't remove negative energy. That's an often misconception. It's not adversarial to negative energy. What it does is it's like an air freshener. It will take that negative energy and it will balance it again. It will reintegrate it properly into the environmental energy around you or within your energy body. That's why they're so useful, these black stones. So you want to key in on that purpose and use this like a lightning rod so that when there's negative energy around, it will absorb it. Okay, and you can use this by itself. You don't have to augment it any other way if you don't want. This by itself becomes a very simple ward. When you're feeling negative or down, you pick it up and you hold it and you push your negativity into it and you put it down. You leave it like as a centerpiece in your home and it will, draw upon. You just visualize every now and then, maybe make it a daily practice, for example, for a little while, where you visualize all the negative energies like a cloud and just being swirling around, create like a vortex, and visualize it entering the stone and know that it's being done. Just trust that it's being done. And do this from time to time. And then, of course, you may have to cleanse and charge this thing again occasionally, because some people don't think you have to repair or cleanse or refresh a stone like this. I don't think that's true or false. I tend to do it, however, because I feel like any kind of air freshener or air filter, they can get clogged. And if for nothing else, it helps you to reconnect with what this is doing. So even if it's not really necessary from a mechanical standpoint, even if this stone doesn't actually get dirty with negative energies, you as an operator, as a magician, as a sorcerer who's trying to do things intentionally, should occasionally reground yourself with this stone, just to reset your relationship with it so that it's working again, because you can become detached. When you're not thinking about something long enough, whatever servitor you've sort of set up, even if it's a very simple one like this, because that is what you've kind of done, you've created a thought form where it's absorbing this negativity. If you don't think about it long enough, it'll fade and it'll go away. It'll be forgotten. That's one way. And then of course that can sometimes turn against you because they don't like to be forgotten. Now what I'll do is, so this would be like my lightning rod, so I'll have this somewhere, and it will of course attract the negative energies to it and then discharge them back into the environment in a more neutral way. And the last thing that I've done, and this is something I don't see anybody else really doing specifically, is I will take something like this, an article of jewelry or a pendant or a necklace, but in this case it's important that it's a ring for this particular example, and I will create a thought form or servitor, and I will do this often in an elaborate ritual with a spirit where I evoke a spirit that's good at giving familiars, or just a very powerful, like one of the Goetic kings that's good for protection, or my personal patron if I had one is what I would use, and ask them to help me in creating a thought form servitor, or even give me a familiar which I would anchor into this ring. Now I've just used thought forms for this one multiple times. This particular one is pretty cool because it looks like, I've used this often in relation with Osmodei because it kind of reminds me of Osmodei, so I usually work with this ring with Osmodei. But I will visualize it as like a flaming skull, right? That looks just like this. So I'll visualize, I'll hold it in my hand, usually my right hand in this case, and I will begin to visualize this flaming skull in an astral space before this big, powerful, angry, really powerful skull, okay? And I will name it, I will give it intentions, I will usually write out a list of things that it can do and things that it can't do, very important for a servitor, and I will give it, of course, commands. Very simple commands to start with, but commands like protect me, go to sleep, go to rest, stuff like that, ways to activate it and deactivate it. But I will also charge it with a very passive intention to protect anything in its environment that it can see or that is around it, or in this particular case, what it can see is a pretty good mental command. But you want something a little bit more all over. So I'll say, whatever you are currently being warned by, and whatever you see is what whatever the commands will be directed at. So if I want to say, protect me from this, I will point at that and say protect me from that. But of course I'm wearing it, so it will protect me in my energy body, and that will be what it does. So I'll envision this thing as a flaming skull. I will use magical methods to anchor it to this, which is really, it can be a very simple process, but it can be an elaborate ritual if you don't know how. So if you're not sure how to do that, The simplest way I can describe it is you kind of, you have to do this in an astral space. You have to go into an astral space, and you have to literally, sometimes with the spirit's help, you have to press and place kind of physically. You have to feel it. You have to feel it in your astral space and feel it entering this object or charge it with it. This can be difficult, and if you're not sure how to do this, then the simpler way to do it would be to invoke a spirit, especially if you're trying to use a spirit to create this. Place it upon your altar and work with the spirit and visualize it. Even if you're not sure what you're seeing, visualize the spiritual forces charging this with this intention that you have. Imagine the spirits bestowing upon it this new identity, this new energy, this new being that belongs to it. And you may have to give it offerings, you may have to give it blood, you may have to do whatever. You know, this is free form, guys. I'm not trying to give you an actual ritual, by the way. If I was trying to do that, I'd write it all out and you'd have something in your hands that you could look at. This is just meant to be an outline, an idea for you to follow. And then what I will do is I will also make sure that whatever entity that is in here has the intention where it will be absorbing negativity when it encounters it. It will be potentially actively being aggressive towards enemies if I desire it, but I tend to just kind of use a servitor like this to just absorb, collect, and then bring it back. And when I'm done with it for the day, I will put it back on its holder. And that's why I chose this point for it, because it actually holds it really well. And I will just set this back on my altar or my chamber, and it will discharge it. You know, it will essentially become a lightning rod for all the shit that I've dealt with all day with this. So you'll see I'll wear this sometimes when I'm nervous. In prior times, you'll see if I'm going somewhere, I might wear this particular ring instead of my other one, or I'll wear it on my other hand. You know, generally speaking, in magic, as my right hand is generally an active and my left hand is a passive, I will often put protection on this hand as kind of like my shield arm, if you will. And people often ask me why I wear this glove. Sometimes that's actually what it's about. Is this has been kind of charged with a passive kind of like this is a protection. This glove. It's also part of my identity, but it's passive to me. So that's often what this is charged with. But anyway, these are just some examples, and I want you guys to maybe spend some time thinking about this, using this as inspirations. Don't try to get too, don't complicate things too much. Try to just be inspired by this. Don't worry about doing it right or wrong. Get into your ritual chamber, work with your spirits. If you're following my book, Become the Maelstrom, if you're using that as a source, or you've already got a practice going, you probably already know what I'm telling you is pretty close to what you're going to do. You can add or subtract complexity to this as you see fit. You can make this much more complicated, where you do full rituals with incense and blood and candles and, you know, invoke planetary forces and everything else. Or you can simply do this stuff in meditation with spiritual entities. And some people like that, some people don't. Obviously it works for me and it works for a lot of other people. So try what works for you. Try to find a way to incorporate these things. Again, the easiest one for most people to start with is just setting up your shielding around your home, and then setting up a simple piece of obsidian to be a lightning rod for the negative energy around you. And then of course you can do things with servitors after the fact. And be careful with servitors as well, because servitors, as I mentioned before, when you create an entity like a servitor, when you don't think about them, they go away. And that's not always true, though. That's kind of what we want, but sometimes if you create the right one, if you've worked with it for long enough, they get a mind of their own. And if you don't think about them, they'll start causing little bits of chaos for you. So there's two ways you can deal with that. One is to just continually work with them and make sure that you reinforce your control over them from time to time. The other way, of course, is to destroy them. And this is why it can be very important. And there's a lot of videos you can find on the internet. Maybe I'll do one later on creating a servitor. It can be very important to create a servitor with a self-destruct clause, a kind of, you know, if I give this command, you're done, you're gone. I'm reabsorbing your energy into myself or wherever I want you to go. So it's really important, if you're setting up a servitor like this, to give it an off switch. And I should have made that more clear in the middle of the video, but sometimes when you're talking free form, you forget your points. It's very important to give it an off switch. So a shutdown, a goodbye, a self-destruct code. And you can make it literally a code, but you have to be careful, because again, you could inadvertently use this. You could be in a bad mood, just be, fuck it, I want to restart. Then you got to go through the whole thing and recreate the thing again. So, but remember, this is very important, and I think nobody talks about this. When you have a self-destruct code or a whatever on your servitor, if you think about the entity after you've done that self-destruct code, there's a chance it won't fully work. I've seen it happen where someone created one, they had it for a while. This is when I was younger. My friend Andreas, he had one, and he did not properly. He kept worrying about it after the fact, so it didn't fully go away. It took a few tries. We did get it to go away, but it was a pain. He couldn't get it to completely shut down. He still felt it around him, and it was bothering him, and blah 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 blah. It was a menace. You know, it wasn't like the worst thing ever, but it was a pain. You know, things would go missing. He was having bad luck. All kinds of weird crap was happening. So when you do your self-destruct for a servitor, you have to make sure, just like any spell, that you cut your mind off of worrying about it and thinking about it. Yeah, if it enters your head once in a blue moon, it's probably unavoidable, you know, but you want to detach as much as you can from that entity's existence. You want to believe it's dead. You know what I'm saying? You have to know it is dead. You know, when you know it is dead, it will be dead. So anyway, those are my bits of advice. This video ran about twice as long than I intended. I just wanted it to be a quick one, but I guess you guys probably enjoyed it, right? Hopefully you guys are still here. If you guys like what I'm doing, I have got my Teespring store up and running. Here's an example of one of the tapestries that I have for sale on my Teespring store. I have a bunch of others and more to come. And of course, this is gorgeous. I think it's gorgeous, especially with this blue light that I have cascading over it. It looks really good. You can use this, of course, as a ritual implement. You can use this to gaze into, and you can chant the invocation that I have over here, you know, in your ritual chamber, and connect with Lucifer, I believe, by using this. I use it all the time. So anyway, guys, my name is D.H. Thorne, if you aren't aware from the beginning of the video. If you like what I'm doing, check out the links in the description to my books, to my Teespring, to my Patreon, or if you're not that type of person, I am very grateful for your likes, comments, and subscribes. Those, of course, are always welcome, and they always go a long way to helping me out. So if you guys like what I'm doing, show me your support, and until next time, mind the shadows.